All right, here we go. Welcome into the show. We have some major breaking news. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. My name is Chase Senior, and as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. It is Thursday, February 19th, and Eagles fans are going to love this. According to Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer and multiple reports, Eagles future Hall of Fame right tackle Lane Johnson will return in 2026. He will play for the Eagles this upcoming season, and he's going to come back for a 14th season in the National Football League. A lot of thoughts on this, and there's plenty to get to, but a reminder, anytime there's breaking Eagles news, I have you covered. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button as we continue to build the channel here at Chat Sports on Eagles. Now, I'm giving you daily and year-round coverage of the Birds, and we're flying out to Indianapolis on Sunday for the start of the NFL Combine. We'll be there all throughout the week, interviewing Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, some of these potential future Eagles and draft prospects looking ahead to the 2026 NFL draft. But pretty much the NFL Combine is like a job conference for the NFL. Agents, coaches, GMs, scouts, prospects, people looking for jobs in the NFL all come to Indy for next week. So there's going to be a lot of Eagles news and rumors as well. And I have you covered every step of the way. All right. Jeff McLane breaking the news just moments ago with this tweet here. Lane Johnson just told me he's officially returning for a 14th season with the Eagles. Having the future Hall of Fame right tackle will be key as head coach Nick Sirianni alters the offense under new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion in 2026. The Eagles will also have a new offensive line coach after Jeff Stoutland resigned earlier this month. Johnson will lead a group that has had only one positional coach in the NFL in Jeff Stoutland. Chris Cooper will be taking over responsibilities as this scheme is likely to change. Johnson missed the final 8 games of the season, including the playoff loss to the 49ers with a Liz Frank foot injury, but he has continued his rehab as he works to regain full strength. So a lot of takeaways there. When I was in San Francisco in the lead up to Super Bowl 60, I was talking to a bunch of people across the NFL, and a lot of you saw the news that the lean at that time was that Lane Johnson was going to play for the Eagles in 2026. And then there was some video surfacing of him doing some offseason workouts where he was on the trap bar and he was lifting a ton of weight. And I talked about that on the show, and I'm like, would Lane Johnson be deadlifting all this weight, doing these squats, doing these hard workouts if he wasn't coming back in 2026? I don't think that he'd be throwing around all that crazy weight if he were retiring. Usually offensive linemen like to get leaner, lose some weight, and so they're not throwing around as much weight. For Lane Johnson, though, that looked like typical offseason training, but it hadn't been official, right? We weren't sure if Lane Johnson was going to come back this year or if he was going to retire. And now that we get the official word, this is massive, massive news for the Eagles. We've talked so much about the Eagles' win-loss record with Lane Johnson since he was drafted out of Oklahoma in 2013 compared to the Eagles' record without him, right? When Lane Johnson is on the field for the Eagles, they win just under 70% of their games going all the way back to his rookie year. When Lane Johnson misses time and when he's not off the field or not on the field, the Eagles win less than 40% of their games. And there's a reason for that. When you think about Lane Johnson, when you watch Lane Johnson, that is what one of the best players in the history of the NFL looks like. That is what a future Hall of Famer looks like. That is the impact that a one-of-one player is able to have on the offense. He's extremely athletic. He's very twitchy for his age and his size. When you look at Lane Johnson, that is an offensive tackle that you would prefer and want to build in a lab, right? He's 6'5", 6'6", well over 300 pounds. When he gets out in space, he can run very quickly. In the pre-draft process with his background as a quarterback and as a tight end, when he was in JUCO and at Oklahoma, he ran a sub-5 40-yard dash. Cam Jurgens has said this guy is an absolute freak. I mean, the guy has six-pack abs. And when a lot of you were growing up watching football and you think about offensive linemen, a lot of these guys were fat. They were not lean. They were very pudgy. Lane Johnson is a very unique player in the way that he plays, but also the way that he's built. And he impacts the psyche of Jalen Hurts when Jalen Hurts knows that his front side is going to be protected by number 65, but he, of course, impacts how the Eagles run the ball, how the Eagles pass the ball. And his ability to shut down some of the top premier pass rushers year over year over year, year after year after year, really has been incredible. I mean, whether he's going up against Von Miller in his prime or Nick Bosa or Khalil Mack, Lane Johnson is able to shut a lot of these players down. And so he's going to go down as one of the best players in the history of this Philadelphia Eagles organization. He is going to be a future Hall of Famer. He'll be rocking that brown jacket, and he will be in Canton in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's despite the fact that he missed some time with that PED suspension, which he has admitted if that keeps him out of the Hall of Fame, Lane Johnson wouldn't be surprised. But even with that PED suspension, it doesn't diminish what he's been able to do. And since that PED suspension, he's still been one of the best right tackles in the history of the National Football League. This is also really important because this Eagles offensive line in 2025 was not good. Jordan Mailata regressed. Landon Dickerson was injured, banged up. He's considering retirement. The injury history for him is a laundry list. Cam Jurgens was injured and did not play well. He went to Medellin, Colombia, to get some stem cells, hopefully into that back, and hopefully that can get him back to playing at a high level. I'm not sure how he made the Pro Bowl because his blown block rate and his inability to block interior defensive linemen was very concerning. Tyler Steen played well, but Tyler Steen wasn't helped out a lot because Cam Jurgens struggled to his left, and then Fred Johnson to his right just isn't Lane Johnson. So this is an offensive line that might be semi-rebuilt this offseason. And if this Eagles offense, which has a new offensive coordinator, who is very inexperienced in Sean Mannion, who's only coached 2 years prior to this, has never called plays before, who's also introducing a new scheme with a new offensive line coach, didn't have Lane Johnson, you would have some major question marks about this offensive line. And I still have lingering question marks about this offensive line, but when you have an anchor in Lane Johnson on the field as part of this offensive line unit, it elevates everybody else. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Howie Roseman in the draft still drafts a right tackle early. I think the Eagles have drafted an offensive lineman in the first round only once in the last 11 years. That would have been Andre Dillard. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles early in the draft, first 3 rounds, for instance, tried to find Lane Johnson's future right tackle replacement. Could that right tackle replacement play left guard or right guard if the Eagles want to upgrade there? The point here is that we could still see a lot of changes and a lot of moves made along the offensive line for the Eagles. But when you have Lane Johnson, it just helps to usher in a new play caller, a new scheme, and a new offensive line coach a lot easier compared to Lane Johnson not returning with the Eagles. And yes, he's getting a little bit older, but Lane Johnson at his age is still playing at an extraordinarily high level. You know, at 6'6", 325, and at 35 years old, he hasn't really shown any signs of decline over the last few years as he's gotten older. Now, of course, he's had some injuries from time to time, but last year, when he was on the field, he played pretty damn well. Now, I do think that the Eagles' offensive line was a little bit tired coming off a year in which Saquon Barkley won Offensive Player of the Year, ran for over 2,000 yards, and Jordan Mailata even said that after winning the Super Bowl, the amount of time that it took him to recover physically was a lot longer and more arduous compared to prior years because the Eagles were such a run-heavy team. So the whole offensive line struggled. And Lane Johnson's numbers weren't as high as we've been accustomed to seeing them, but he was still excellent. I mean, his overall PFF grade was 77.4, 18th at the position among all offensive tackles. That's right tackle, left tackles. His pass blocking grade was 80.4, 9th among all tackles. His run blocking grade was 69.8, 33rd. but the Eagles collectively as a team did not run the football as well. Here's the big thing, though. Only had 3 penalties, no sacks allowed, no hits allowed. Both those categories ranked first among all offensive tackles, and he gave up 7 pressures in 10 games. That ranked third at the position in 444 snaps. Now, you compare that to what he did in 2024, when I thought that he got snubbed. He should have been an all-pro. He was better than Penei Sewell, in my opinion. His overall PFF grade in 2024, 85.4, 7th. Pass blocking grade, 88.1, 6th. Run blocking grade, 80, that ranked 12th. And he did not give up a sack, did not give up a quarterback hit. Both those ranked number 1 at the position among all tackles. And he only had 3 penalties. That was 13th, and gave up 7 total pressures. That ranked 3rd. Or sorry, no. Those are the numbers from this past year. Penalties, 6. Sacks allowed, 0. Hits allowed, 1. Pressures allowed, 10. That was 2nd. So he did not give up a sack in 2025 per PFF. Did not give up a sack in 2024. Let's go back to 2023. He gave up 3 sacks then. So in the last 2 seasons, Lane Johnson has given up just 3 sacks. And the hits, the pressures allowed, very, very low. Again, this is what an all-timer looks like. This is what a generational type of player looks like. So huge news for the Philadelphia Eagles here on this Thursday, February 19th, that Lane Johnson is returning to the Philadelphia Eagles in 2026. And if you're looking for an Eagles jersey to get, I always tell people, get an all-timer, right? My Brian Dawkins authentic jersey back when Reebok was the NFL sponsor, I still wear it now. Jason Kelce was the other Eagles jersey that I got. I get all-timers, right? You get a Lane Johnson jersey, you're going to be able to wear that bad boy forever, because everybody, and the real ones, know it's one of the best players in the history of the National Football League, and he's going to go down as one of the best players in the history of this Eagles organization. And lastly, we'll talk about some of his accolades and the resume that he's been able to put together. So Chip Kelly drafted him 4th overall in 2013 out of Oklahoma. One of the few great moves that Chip Kelly made. That and hiring Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland was hired in 2013. So he's the only offensive line coach that Lane Johnson has ever known. 2-time Super Bowl champion. One of 4 Eagles players ever to win 2 titles. 2-time first-team All-Pro. 3-time second-team All-Pro. A 6-time Pro Bowler as well. And what he's meant to the Eagles on the field, off the field, in between the lines, in the locker room, has also been extremely valuable. Going to be going live a little bit later right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Catch you in a bit. But the Lane train coming back for 2026. You got to love it.